Hi there everyone, hope you're all doing really well. My name is Matt, I'm an economics graduate and ACA qualified accountant through working in the audit department at Deloitte. Today I'm going to try and talk through my experiences in the first sort of half year of the graduate scheme to try and give people a fairly detailed overview of what they can expect from these first few months if you're thinking of applying. Personally, when I started, I was really just sort of going with the flow and doing what I was told at each different point, whether that be exam related, college related, work related, busy season related, without having too much of a plan as to what the next few months into the future are actually going to look like. So hopefully this video goes some way to combating that issue for anybody watching. So without further ado, let's crack on. So as with most graduate schemes, regardless of things like industry or sector, it's going to start in September. And the very first thing you'll do is go through a week or so of really generic tutorials around things like the structure of the firm, laptop security, a really broad overview of what an audit looks like from start to finish. This will then be followed by a more sort of detailed, a more specific training course called the Audit Experience, which when I did it was led by a senior manager and a director, so relatively senior people trying to pass down some knowledge to you. And this will basically involve undertaking what's effectively a mock audit right through from the start, whereby you're going to receive a number of different pieces of financial information. You're going to have to process these, ask follow-up questions, and then eventually conclude on the result of the testing that you're going to carry out. I found this sort of 2-week session to be a pretty steep learning curve. The first few days you absolutely don't know anything, nor are you expected to, but then things slowly start to sort of seep in and you get to grips with things actually pretty quickly. And the people that were running the course, in my experience, were really helpful. They've obviously been allocated that job because they're pretty good at it. They're good at dealing with younger members of staff and being receptive to the questions they're asking, so it's nothing to be daunted by, but it is worth noting first few days are going to be like someone speaking double Dutch to you. So at this point we are sort of reaching the end of September. You've been with the business for about 3 weeks or so, but you're still yet to visit a client, still yet to do any client work, and certainly still yet to visit college. But when you hit November, this sort of really starts to change. In my experience, the year group was split in half, just alphabetically based on the surnames, with one half of people going straight into college to start learning for their first batch of exams, and the others going to start work on client engagements in the office as part of other wider teams. For the half of the year who start being involved with client work, these clients are basically randomly allocated by the office scheduler, and this is pretty much luck of the draw. There's some big glamorous clients out there that people tend to prefer to work on, and there's some other fiddly, not so nice ones, and yeah, like I say, luck of the draw. First couple of weeks people will really be talking about, oh, I'm so pleased I ended up on this, or that one's what I had my eye on before I started. There's not really a lot you can do about it, I'm afraid. If you did really want to try and be ahead of the curve, it possibly is worth, before you actually starting, trying to track down, get hold of who the office scheduler is and express your sort of personal interest in a specific sector, whether that be sport or whatever. Or you can say, actually, I don't drive, or I live here, can my clients try and be based over here, just to give them something to work with. But generally this isn't what people do, and it's typically luck of the draw, like I said. And then what tends to happen is for the next couple of weeks, both halves of the year will alternate between doing 2 or 3 days in college and 2 or 3 days on client work. And then it works out as both groups being ready to sit their first 3 certificate level exams at, broadly speaking, the same time, the same sitting. And what this means is you'll actually be done with your first 3 certificate level exams by the end of your 5th or 6th week at the business. So you're really sort of thrown in the deep end from that perspective. You do get through the first batch really quickly. The only saving grace is that those first 3 exams hopefully aren't too challenging, and if you've done any modules related to that sort of thing at university, then hopefully you're one step ahead of the game there as well. These 3 exams themselves will actually be accounting, assurance and law, and I won't go into too much detail on each individual one in this video. I'm happy to do a future video on that. If it's something that people would find useful, let me know in the comments down below. That's something you want to see. But like I say, if you've covered anything remotely similar to this at university, hopefully that'll stand you in good stead. And assurance is really not too bad at all. It's really just a case of applying some common sense to multiple choice questions. There's obviously some facts and things to learn, but generally not too bad at all. This isn't actually how it worked when I took the exams, but they're now all done on the computer, which means the turnaround time in terms of marking is really fast. It's basically just a robot processing your answers, so you can log back into the system at 6 a.m. the next morning and find out how you've gone. And at this stage, you've either passed or failed. The actual mark isn't really too relevant unless you're trying to go for some sort of regional prize. What Deloitte in my case are interested in is just getting that pass under your belt. Let's just talk worst case scenario for a second. If you have failed, this is when your office manager will get in touch, possibly involved with the scheduler as well, to try and arrange when your resit's going to be. And they will helpfully explain to you that should you chuck in another fail second time round, your time at the Big Four is going to be over before it even started. The firing policy around exams can be pretty savage. What they did at Deloitte, like I say, was 2 fails of the same exam and unfortunately you're out. But let's not focus too much on that right now. You'd probably end up doing your resit in about a week or 10 days later, and hopefully what's happened is you've learned from your mistakes first time round and you're able to blitz the resit and get back on track. So to move on from the slightly somber topic of resits and the like, we're now at mid-November. It's about 6 weeks after you join the business, and it's going to be your first little spell of doing any client work for a sustained period. This comes as a huge delight to each of the respective engagement managers who are really keen to get some fresh-faced worker bees helping out with some spreadsheeting. This is something you'll do for another 2 or 3 weeks, and then before you know it, it's back into college in early December to start learning for the next 3 certificate level exams. It's now time to learn the nuances of tax, which is lots of facts and figures, but the content isn't actually too complex. Management information, which is sort of practical mathsy type questions around business costing and revenue per unit, similar to the sort of thing you get on a numerical aptitude test for applying for the job in the first place. And finally, business, technology and finance, which looks at things like ownership structure, management teams and operational functions within a business. Again, it's just a couple more weeks in college, and then before you know it, you're sitting these exams a week or 10 days before Christmas. Now, whether you pass or fail any of these 3 exams, that's really going to determine how much fun you can have over the Christmas break. Whether you're going to be able to take advantage of the Boxing Day sales, or whether you'll be spending the time sitting at home learning about the 3 components of a legally binding contract. The other thing that can impact how much fun you can have on your Christmas break is whether you get assigned, again by the scheduler, to one of the dreaded New Year's Eve stock counts. This is certainly something you want to try and avoid, and a little tip is if you can befriend your local scheduler, maybe hand over a bottle of wine as a Christmas present, and it could work out to be mutually beneficial. So to move on into early January, and assuming that you've got your exams boxed off, whether that be first time passes or otherwise, you're now into the dreaded busy season. Busy season typically lasts from January right through to March or April, primarily because loads of businesses have got December or January, February year ends, which means there's plenty of work to do at this time of year. Exams are out of the way at least, but you need to really strap in here because this is where things start to get a little bit tough. I come back to a phrase I've used quite a few times already this video, and that's because it does accurately describe a number of different elements of your first few months with the business, and that's steep learning curve. During busy season, the managers are going to expect quite a lot of you. There will certainly be some late nights. Generally, you're going to be responsible for what's been deemed the easier and less judgmental areas of the audit. You'll have to review tens, if not hundreds, of invoices to double check the amounts. You'll have to sift through bank statements to confirm cash balances, and possibly a little bit of fixed assets and stock verification also. It's not going to be anything that in itself is too complicated or too challenging, and the thing that bogs people down is just the sheer volume of work. And you've got to remember, this is your first experience of proper real life frontline audit work, so naturally you're going to take a few days, a few weeks to really get up to speed with things. And unfortunately this slog is going to continue, as I said, right through to March, possibly even April if you're particularly unlucky. Again, it comes down to the hand the scheduler has dealt you. What this does mean though is that April is a great time to get some holiday booked in, give yourself a chance to come up for air and hopefully be able to take advantage of the bank holiday days around Easter as well. The good news is that beyond April, things do start to noticeably quieten down, and you'll have a chance to take stock and start to prepare yourself really for what will again be a long summer of professional stage exams. Just to quickly mention, this post busy season April type period is when appraisals start to take place, whereby you have a few meetings with your appraiser or your coach and discuss the feedback that you've been given by managers or senior managers that you've worked for on their engagements throughout the last few months of busy season. I get that this can sound slightly sort of daunting, but it's really not anything to worry too much about in your first year. What the business is really going to be concerned about is that your exams are safely out the way, and as long as you're sort of holding your own when it comes to your performance at the day job, then everything's going to be absolutely fine. And I think that's probably about it in terms of a whistle-stop tour of the first 6 months or so with the Big Four. I'll try and do another video at some point covering that first summer of exams. But I think the conclusion really on the first 6 months in terms of how busy, how daunting it is that there is a lot to do. The volume of exams and work is pretty high. The saving grace is that individually none of that is too challenging. So in terms of intelligence levels, I don't think that's anything the vast majority of people have got to worry about. It's just a case of whether you're happy to put in the hard work and long hours. So I hope people have found that vaguely useful. If you have, let me know down in the comments. It'd be great to hear from you. Also, any questions or queries, feel free to drop me a note as well, and I'll certainly get back to you. That's everything from me though today, guys. All the best till next time. Stay safe and bye-bye.